Hello, I'm Caden at the Different Drummer Pottery, home of the Crock Drum. Today, we're going to be working with our crock drums and working on positional voicing. This is where the crock drum is really different from a lot of other drums that you're going to encounter. I play it similar to how you would play like a djembe or congas, but the approach is a little different in that with djembe or congas, you would use your full hand, and on the crock drum, we're just going to be using thumb and fingers. When thinking about the different sounds and regions of the drum, I approach this very much like you would a drum set. I'm looking for the bass drum sound, the snare sound. Those are kind of your two most important fundamental sounds. And then working in some of the hi-hat subdivisions to help you keep time. And then the other flares and things on the edges of the drum. I kind of think of those like the toms of a drum set for doing fills and stuff like that. So to begin with, for what I think of as the bass drum sound, I use the ridge of my thumb in the center, or well, just off center a little bit. And you have this very nice round tone. And what's cool about that on the crock drum is we have this sound hole, and with your offhand, you can change the tone of that fundamental sound. So you can tune that. This just allows you to add a lot more character to your rhythm and your beats as you're playing. Now for the snare sound is a little bit more complex. If you're familiar with like conga style Latin percussion, this is essentially a palm mute slap. So I use the palm of my offhand, and the meaty part of your hand here, you push that. You want to depress the drum just a little bit so that there's kind of a flex there. And then on the edge of the drum, I'm primarily just using one finger from about the second knuckle up. And just really smack the edge of the drum. And so that's without the palm, that's with adding the palm. And so you can have that as kind of like a shot for like a fill. Same movement with your primary hand. But by adding the palm mute, it just gives you this really crisp pop. So there's kind of your two main sounds there, your bass and your snare. Now the hi-hat sounds, since I keep my offhand really close to the sound hole most of the time for tuning my fundamental sound and for getting that palm mute, these fingers are right near the edge of the drum most of the time. And so I can get this just real soft kind of tap there on the edge. And it allows me to put in those subdivisions that normally you would think of as being like the hi-hat on the drum set. Now for fills and things, I move on around the edges of the drums and play those with more of the meat of my other fingers. Sometimes I get kind of a whole, not quite whole hand, but most of, from kind of the pads here at the top of the palm up to the fingers. And depending on kind of how much of your hand is in contact with the drum, you can really change the pitch of that sound and the timbre of it. And yeah, and moving your hits around to the sides of the drum, it changes how your hand contacts the drum, but it's a good way to kind of keep some separation with the type of sound you're creating and where that's located. So to me, again, if I'm playing a fill, I like to move to the outer edges of the drum, again, because I'm thinking of that as like toms and moving around the toms of the drum kit. So there's just some separation there for me, as opposed to the fundamental sound and the slap sound. Most of those hits deal with using the pads of your fingers, and that gives you one sound. It's a harsher sound than if you use like the end of your finger. You can push into the drum, and that gives you a rounder sound. You can hear the difference there. The pad of my finger has more of a slap sound, whereas pushing into the drum, it's a rounder tone, it's less harsh, and sometimes, it's fun just to be able to throw those into the middle of the beat, give your beat a little different flavor. Another fun thing you can do, and this is kind of pulling some inspiration from oud playing, you can pull away from the sound hole with your offhand as you're striking with your dominant hand, and it gives you this boing, it's this kind of this wet, kind of liquidy type sound, and that's it's not something I use a ton, but it is a fun sound to be able to just kind of call up should whatever you're playing along with, should it need that kind of sound. So that's the main regions of the drum. We have our fundamental, or our bass drum, the slap or snare sound, and you can tune the slap sound based on how far your muting hand is from the edge of the drum. So if you're way up near the edge, you get this real high-pitched pop. But as you move more towards the center, it's more of a deeper, hollower sound. You can kind of think of that as an exercise for working with the sound hole as well as the pop sound of changing the tuning of both. So there's the main regions of the crock drum. We have the fundamental or the bass sound. We have the slap or the snare sound. And then we have the toms or the edge sounds of the drum. And then we have our hi-hat with our light taps on the edges. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe and follow us on Facebook to stay up to date with all the latest videos as they come out.